When I moved into my new apartment, I thought I was getting a great deal. The rent was ridiculously cheap for the area, and the place, though old, seemed perfect for someone starting out on their own. The building was over 60 years old, cracked floorboards, creaky doors, and a faint smell of mildew, but nothing that seemed dangerous. Just a little worn, a little tired. At first, everything was fine. The first week went by without incident. Then the sound started. It began subtly, faint tapping noises that I assumed were rats or old pipes. But the sounds didn't stop. They became rhythmic, more distinct. Each night, I'd hear a soft scratching behind the walls, a dragging noise that felt like something was moving in the dark. One night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to a whisper. I sat up, heart racing, trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. "Help me!" It came from the wall beside my bed. So close I could almost feel the breath. My mind raced. It was impossible. But the voice repeated, clearer now. "Help me!" I stood frozen. There was no one in the room, no one in the hallway. It had to be my imagination, I told myself. But the next night, it came again. "Please, help me!" The whispering grew louder, more desperate. "Help me, please!" The voice seemed to crawl out of the walls, getting closer with each passing night. I pressed my ear to the wall, terrified to hear anything more. But I couldn't stop. There was something in there, something alive. I called my landlord and he brushed me off. "Old building," he said. "Pipes, wood settling, nothing to worry about." But I couldn't shake the feeling. The whispers grew more frantic. "Help me, get me out." One night I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a flashlight and a crowbar and started tearing at the drywall near where the sound was coming from. My hands shook as I worked, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. But when the drywall gave way, I found nothing. No rats, no pipes, nothing, just a hollow space. But there was a dark stain pressed into the wall. It looked like a handprint, but from the inside. Someone or something had been trying to push its way out. I was panicking now. I searched online, trying to find anything about the building's history. What I found sent a chill through my veins. Years ago, a woman named Amelia had lived in the apartment. Neighbors reported hearing banging and scratching sounds coming from inside her unit. Then one night, she disappeared. The police never found her, but they found her boyfriend, Carl, dead across the hall, though the authorities concluded it was a drug overdose. Amelia was never found, and no one ever mentioned her again. The pieces began to fall into place. What if she wasn't gone? What if she was still trapped behind the walls, still screaming for help? I tried to leave. I packed up my things, planning to move out immediately. But when I returned the next day to collect the rest of my belongings, the apartment door was locked. I knocked, but no one answered. I called the landlord again, but he never picked up. When I went down to the building office, the manager told me, without looking up, the unit's been sealed for investigation. The previous tenants, there was some issue. I didn't ask more. I just left. But as I stepped into my car, I glanced up at the apartment window. And there, behind the glass, I saw her, Amelia, her face pressed against the window, twisted in pain, eyes wide open, lips stretched into a silent scream. I ran. I haven't been back since, but the whispers, they're still with me. They don't come from the walls anymore. Now they're inside my head, quiet at first, but growing louder every night. "Help me, please, get me out." And I'm starting to wonder, was Amelia the only one trapped in those walls, or am I next? I have a confession. I've been trying to forget about this for years, but I can't. What I saw that night still haunts me, and I know I'm not going to be able to shake it until I tell someone who might understand. It was a few years ago. My buddy Jeff and I decided to do something different for the weekend. Get away from the noise of the city and do some camping in this remote forest up north. It was a place we'd heard about from a guy at work. He said it was peaceful and quiet, a perfect place to disconnect. But as soon as we got there, I felt off. Something wasn't right. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, and the trees were taller than I'd ever seen, like they were reaching for the sky. We didn't let it ruin the mood, though. We set up camp, had a few beers, and cracked some jokes by the fire. But then the air went still. I mean, completely still. Like no birds, no bugs, nothing. Just silence. I didn't think much of it at first, but it was so unnerving. It felt like something was watching us. Every now and then, I'd glance over my shoulder, but every time I turned, there was nothing there. At some point, around midnight, we decided to go for a walk. Jeff had this idea to explore deeper into the woods, but the deeper we went, the darker it got. Even with the moon out, the trees blocked most of the light. And then, as we were walking down this narrow trail, I saw it. A figure, maybe 30 feet in front of us, standing perfectly still between the trees. It looked like like a person, but something was wrong. Too tall, too thin, the head was too large, and the body was impossibly stretched. I thought maybe it was a trick of the light, but no. This thing was standing there, unmoving, like it was waiting for us. I froze, and I swear to God, Jeff didn't see it at first. I pointed out to him, and he said I was just imagining things. But when he looked, it was there, right there, and that's when he started to panic. We called out to it, but there was no answer, no movement. It just stood there. The silence grew thicker, more suffocating, and I felt my heart beating in my throat. I don't know why I did it, but I took a step toward it. That was my mistake. The moment I stepped forward, it turned its head, slowly, unnaturally, like it was snapping into position. That's when we both saw it, its eyes. These huge black voids, hollow and empty, and yet I knew it could see me. It knew I was there, and it wanted me to come closer. I swear I could feel it pulling me toward it, like some force beyond my control. I started moving, and Jeff shouted at me to stop, but I couldn't. I was almost there when something whispered, not in my ear, but in my mind. "Don't leave." I snapped out of it, and we ran. I don't even know how we got back to camp. All I could hear was my heart pounding in my ears, my legs burning from running so fast. We threw everything into the car and left before the sun even rose. But that's not the part that still chills me. The next week, Jeff called me. His voice was shaking, and he didn't sound like himself. He said, "I saw it again." At first, I thought he was messing with me, but then he told me something I'll never forget. He said, "I woke up this morning, the thing was standing at the foot of my bed." And the worst part, Jeff had never told anyone what we saw that night. But when I asked him to describe it, he gave me the same exact details. He said, "It wasn't human, and it wasn't alone." I asked him what that meant, and he told me he wasn't sure if it was just one thing. Now, we both know we're not alone in that forest, and whatever we saw is still there, waiting for someone else to come too close.